In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys the best build at every single position in NBA 2K22 Next Gen. But first, if you're looking for somebody to grind your badges, hit up Elite Badge Grinding. They're super fast and 100% legit. Click their links in the description and let them know Hambo sent you. Also, if you guys could do me a quick favor, scroll down, smash that big red subscribe button, as well as like the video, that'd be greatly appreciated. So for this first build, we're actually going to work backwards and we're going to start with the center position. For this center build, we are going to be making a popper. First, for the body settings, I would recommend dropping down your height to 6'9". Short centers are always the meta, especially in park. And if you do go 6'10", you're going to have restricted jump shot bases, and as well, your jump shot is going to be a lot slower. If you guys do want a tall 7-foot center build, there's a video in the card up above where I do show you guys one. For the weight, drop this down to minimum to be as fast as possible. And then next, for the wingspan, drop that down to 7'1". This way you can have a slightly better three-pointer. And even when you do this, your defense is still going to be very, very good. Starting things off with the finishing attributes. First, for the close shot, you're going to want this in the 87. Bump up your driving layup to a 94, your driving dunk to an 80. Next, your standing dunk at a 93. And finally, for the last attribute in finishing, you're going to want post control at a 74. Going down to shooting, you're going to want to max out your three-pointer at an 83 and then bump up your mid-range to an 87. This build will definitely be able to green more than consistently. For playmaking, you're never really going to be dribbling, so you only need to upgrade your pass accuracy to an 88. Whether you're throwing the ball down court or you're dishing out to an open shooter, you definitely want to be able to pass and have gold bullet passer. Starting things off with the defensive / rebounding, you're going to want max interior defense. Next, for the perimeter defense, bump this up to a 78. For steal, you're going to want this at a 76. For block, you're going to want this at an 88. And then for the rebounding, you're going to want offensive rebound at an 84. And finally, defensive rebound at an 82. This build is going to have very good defense and rebounding, and as well, it's also going to have silver brick wall. You'd be surprised how many centers in this game don't have brick wall at all. So going down to the physicals, you're going to want max speed and acceleration. Your strength is good at a 58. You can drop your vertical down to a 60 if you want to. And then go ahead and max out stamina. This build doesn't have insane movement or anything, but it's definitely going to be able to get around the court. With whatever ratings you do have left, you can throw in free throw and get a 51 free throw. This build has 104 badges, which is crazy. It can do literally everything in this game besides dribble, which you really don't need a center build to be doing. Also, if you do want a higher free throw on this build, you can drop down your post control to a 64. And then this way you can have an 84 free throw, which is definitely a lot better. Moving on to the takeovers. For the first takeover, I would recommend going with See the Future since you are a center. For takeover number 2, you could go with Stuff Box if you want to, but I'm going to go with Spot Up Precision. And as you guys can see, I built a facilitating 3 level 2-way. Moving on to the power forward build. Moving on to the power forward build, for the position, I would recommend going with power forward. This build is going to be kind of like a stretch playmaker or a point forward type build. Also, with all the builds in this video, they can definitely be other positions if you want them to. Starting things off with the height, I would recommend dropping this down to 6'8". For the weight, drop this down to 210 pounds. As I said, this makes you as fast as possible. For wingspan, bump this up 1 to 7'3", and then go ahead and move on to the attributes. Starting things off with the driving dunk, you're going to want this at a 92 to get elite contact dunks. For driving lay, you're going to want this at an 86. And then finally, for close shot, bump this up to a 79. Scrolling down to shooting, go ahead and max out your three-pointer and then bump up your mid-range to an 82. These ratings aren't the highest or anything, but it's definitely going to be able to green extremely consistently. Moving on to the playmaking attributes. First, for your pass accuracy, you're going to want this at an 89. Go ahead and max out your ball handle at an 80 and then bump up your speed with ball to a 60. Yeah, you guys see. For the defense / rebounding attributes, first for the perimeter, you're going to want this at an 86. For the steal, you're going to want this at an 82. For the block, you're going to want this at an 89, which is max. Over rebound, you're going to want this at an 81. And then finally, for defensive rebound, bump this up to an 88. This build is definitely going to have very, very good defensive and rebounding and pretty much guard every single position. And then finally, for the physicals, you're going to want max speed and acceleration. You're going to want your vert at an 80. And then finally, for the stamina, you're going to want this max. You do have 1 rating. I would recommend just putting it on steel. That's probably the most valuable thing you can put it on. This build has in total 100 badges, which is absolutely crazy again. This build is honestly so good. It can do everything in this game. In the video in the card up above, I show you guys a gameplay of me taking a build very similar to this to the 1v1 court, and you guys can really just see how good this build is. If you want free throw on this build, I would recommend dropping down your offensive rebound to a 74. You should be able to have also a 74 free throw, and then you can drop that 1 rating we put on steel to get a 79. Moving on to the takeovers. Now you have a lot of good options, but for the first takeover, I'm going to go with limitless range. And then for takeover number 2, I'm going to go with finishing moves. I want this to be kind of like a Kevin Durant type build. And as you guys can see, I have built a post playmaker, which honestly does kind of make sense as a name. Moving on to build number 3. Moving on to this small forward build. For this build, we're going to be making a lockdown. Obviously, for the position, you need to be a small forward. That's kind of a given. For the body settings, first, drop your height down to 6'6". You guys can just see how much this helps your perimeter and steal. For the weight, also drop this down to minimum. This way you can just be way quicker, which makes it easier to stick on defenders. And then finally, for the wingspan, bump this up to 7'3". This will just help your defense out a ton. Starting things off with the finishing attributes. Now, you're never really going to be a slasher on this build. But first, I would recommend upgrading your close shot to a 53. Next, for your driving lay, you're going to want this at a 61. And then finally, for your driving dunk, you're going to want this at a 77. This build isn't going to be catching contact dunks, but on like a fast break or something, you want to be able to at least dunk the ball. Moving on to the shooting attributes. First, for your three-pointer, you're going to want this at an 80, and then you're going to want your mid-range at an 81. On this lockdown build, you're only really going to be shooting in the corner, and you'll be able to knock those down 100% of the time. For your ball handling and speed with ball, you're going to want both of these at an 83. And then scrolling up to your pass hack, you're going to want this at an 85. On this build, you don't need like superb playmaking or anything, but you want to be able to move around the court without getting ripped. And you also want to be able to make passes to your guard without getting them yoinked every single time. For the defensive / rebounding attributes, the main focus of this build, you're going to want your perimeter defense at a 94, your steal at a 97, your block at a 78, your offensive rebound at a 79, and your defensive rebound at an 81. You have very good badges on this build at 31 total badges. And as well, you also have Hall of Fame clamps, Hall of Fame pickpocket, and Hall of Fame interceptor. And your perimeter defense and steal rating is just crazy. For your physicals, you're going to want max speed, max excel, and then pretty much max out your stamina. Just throw everything you have left onto it. This build only has 94 badges, which I'm not going to lie isn't crazy or anything, but it definitely plays a role. If you guys need a comp build that can just knock down the corner three and clamp up at everyone on defense, this is the build for you. If you do want free throw on this build, you're going to want to do this. For your finishing attributes, first, you're going to want to drop down your driving layup to a 57. This will give you a 71 free throw, which is decent. But if you just drop your speed rating down 1, you can get a 91 free throw. Moving on to the takeovers. For the first takeover, of course, we're going with extreme clamps. And then for takeover number 2, you could go with one of these other lockdown takeovers. But honestly, let's just double up on extreme. And as you guys can see, I built a two-way playmaker. And honestly, as a name, this does kind of make sense. Moving on to the shooting guard build. For this build, we're going to be making kind of like an all-around build, but we're going to be focused mainly on shooting. For the body settings, you're going to want to leave your height default at 6'5". For the weight, you're going to want to drop this down all the way to minimum. And then finally, for the wingspan, drop this down 2 ratings to 6'8". For the finishing attributes, you're going to want your driving dunk at an 84, your driving lay at a 72, and your close shot at a 66. The driving dunk at an 84 will give you pro contact dunks. This isn't one of those builds that's going to be gamming on everyone, but also on this build, you're going to be trying to shoot more than you are trying to dunk. Moving on to the shooting attributes, first, you're going to want your three-pointer at a 90, and then you're going to want to bump up your mid-range to an 81. So far, I'm pretty sure this is the best shooting build that I have showed you guys, and you 100% are not going to be missing on this build. Moving on to the playmaking attributes. First, for your ball handle, you're going to want this at an 86. You're going to want your speed with ball also at an 86 and your pass act at a 73. In total, you're going to have 27 playmaking badges. So definitely, if you do need to run point guard on this build, you 100% can. For your defensive / rebounding attributes, you're going to want to bump up your perimeter defense to an 85. And then you're also going to want to bump up your steal to an 89. This build's defense isn't great or anything, but as a perimeter defender, you're still going to be able to stay in front of your man. And you're still going to be able to consistently bump them and get stops. Moving on to the physicals. For your speed, you're going to want this at a 93. For your acceleration, you're going to want this at a 91. For your vertical, you're going to want this at a 75. And then finally, for your stamina, maxes out at a 99. This build is definitely going to have very good speed and acceleration. It's going to be able to move around very well. You do have one rating. I would recommend just throwing it on block. This build has in total 91 badges, which isn't crazy or anything. But then again, it's still going to be a very good all-around build. If you do want free throw on this build, I recommend dropping down that 1 block rating and then also dropping down your speed to a 91. You'll have a 97 free throw. Moving on to the takeovers. For the first takeover, I would recommend going with Limitless. And then for takeover number 2, I would also recommend going with Limitless, since this build is, after all, kind of like a pure sharp. And as you guys can see, I built a 2-way 3-point shot creator, which is honestly a very cool name. Moving on to the point guard build. Moving on to the final build of this video. For this build, we are going to be making a meta point guard build that's really good at shooting and playmaking, but trust me, it's a lot better than the really short ones. For the body settings, first for the height, drop this down to 6 foot. And then next, the weight, also drop this down to minimum. You're actually gonna have 99 speed acceleration if you do the Gatorade drills or get Gym Rat. It won't pop up saying that you have 99 speed, but once you do get into the game, it will give you your +4. I don't know why 2K decided to do it like this year. It's really confusing, but it is what it is. And then for the wingspan, drop this down to 6 foot. This way, as you guys can see, you can have 99 3-pointer in mid-range. For the finishing attributes, as you guys know, we're making a meta point guard, so you're not really going to have any finishing at all. All you're going to do is bump up your close shot to a 67. For your 3-pointer, you're going to want to max this out at a 99. And then for your mid-range, you're going to want this at a 97. You'll have in total 40 shooting badges. Moving on to your playmaking attributes, you're going to want to max out your ball handle and upgrade your speed with ball to a 93. And then next for your pass act, you're going to want this at a 94. You'll have in total 37 playmaking badges, which is more than good enough. Going down to defensive / rebounding attributes. First, for your perimeter defense, you're going to want this at a 77. And then next, for your steal, you're going to want this at a 93. Defensively, this build will be able to at least kind of hold its own on the perimeter, way better than all those 5'8" builds that everyone else is using. And then scrolling down to your physicals, you're going to want your speed at a 95, no higher. There's really no reason to go any higher. And then for your excel, you're going to want this at a 95 and your stamina at a 91. You do have 2 ratings. I would recommend just throwing them on to free throw. If you want to make a meta point guard build that everyone is using with 99 3-pointer and 99 speed acceleration, then just make this build. I mean, it's literally the exact same thing, but you're way taller, so you're going to be able to at least kind of play defense. If you do want free throw on this build, you're going to want to do this. Drop your steal down to an 88, upgrade your block to a 45, and if you throw all those ratings onto free throw, you can have a 94 free throw. And then additionally, you can also have a 92 stamina now. For the first takeover, of course, we're going with Limitless Range. And then for takeover number 2, of course, we're going with Limitless Range again. And as you guys can see, I built a playmaking shot creator, which definitely does make sense as a name. If you have made it this far into the video, you are a real one. Let me know that you are down below in the comment section. If you guys want a dribble tutorial or some other builds, click on the videos on the screen right now. Like, comment, subscribe, go follow me on Twitter, and I'm out. Peace.